Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to start with an origin story. That's always a mistake, right? Nobody likes origin stories, but I won't dwell on it. This will be kind of like when Stan Lee would write the little paragraph at the top of the book telling you how the Fantastic Four came to be. So this is my dad on the left, somewhere around 1955, I think. He loved Westerns, The Lone Ranger. He wanted to name his dog the Lone Ranger, but his parents talked him into Tonto instead. And notice crossbody draw on the gun there. And first generation Chuck Taylors. So my dad loved comic books, the Western comic books, the Walt Disney Looney Tune comic books. And so, but he got married very young, right out of high school. Then very quickly had a kid, and he gave up his comic books because of me. So I ended up reading, as a child, his comic books. And his comic books were in this gold treasure chest. It doesn't look gold anymore, but it was spray painted gold. It was his toy chest from like 65 years ago. And he when he moved out of his parents' house, he took it with him. And so think about this for a moment, the symbolism here. I was born into a house that contained a golden treasure chest. Looking back, it seems inevitable that this is the universe telling me to look inside this box. And here's what was inside this box. So they're not in very good condition anymore. I'm told I took good care of them. My brother didn't, so here we are. But I'm going to focus today. Here's all of them as I was about to bag them when I reacquired the collection after many years. But today, I'm going to focus on the covers of Carl Barks. Now, Carl Barks was the primary duck artist, as he was known. He worked in Disney Animation in the shorts division. He was I think a gag artist. He'd come up with funny visual situations. He, I forget why he left animation. I think he thought it was too much work or something, but he decided to go to comics, and Walt chose him because Mickey had become such a big hit. They wanted to develop a world for Donald, and so Carl Barks was given that assignment, and he developed, is it Duckburg, Scrooge McDuck, everything that became DuckTales later on was all developed by Carl Barks in these, they were called 4-color comics. Here we are, here's a couple. These 4-color Dell comics. And so the comic technically didn't have a title. It was just called 4-color, and then it would come out several times a month, but with different titles. So some were Donald, some were Zorro, things like that. And so I opened that box, I stuck my head in it, I haven't pulled it out since. Yeah, I think I taught myself to read, to draw, and who knows what else from that box. But anyway, today, since I have photographs of all these, having pulled them out to bag them, I thought I would just go through the covers. I'm presuming all done by Carl Barks. I might misidentify a few because the work wasn't signed. So I'm going to go through these and analyze these from the fundamentals of character art. In my opinion, the big three are line of action, acting, and silhouette. So I'm going to mark these up like John Madden, if anybody remembers him. So look at this I'm on the right-hand side here. Look at that beautiful line of action. His shoulders back, his butt out, and that leg sending that hip back. So look at the variety in the faces to sort of get the idea that that's going on, but very compact. And look how easily read his silhouette is. You have these guys over here, each with, a variety of expressions to show the kind of turmoil as they're in the spin cycle. And then just enough details to sell the thing. But look at this. Just that little crossover. He's breaking that line to prevent a tangent, to put him clearly in the in the foreground. This, I haven't been to school in a while. I assume they no longer do the dunce cap when you get a math quiz wrong. It's a pretty simple gag, obviously, but there's some fun stuff going in. Look at their eye direction based on their height. Very, very obvious. So it's almost in a way he's using the edges of these two things to divide it into a 1-2 gag. Here's Donald, very content and pleased and not even sneering. He's just enjoying his work because he has silenced these guys. Wearing a motorboard for some reason, I guess just to sell that he's a teacher. It doesn't really make much sense. And this might be the offending equation here. 2 + 2 is 3. A nice way to get a group and an individual to sort of have equal weight is for the use of perspective. And he has a real nice perspective there to give these guys a clean, open silhouette. There's, you don't see anymore, but there's negative space around them to let them be down there. And then the pole laying on the ground to give it enough storytelling. This one is much more complex. So simple gag. Donald's feeding popcorn, but the nephews are stealing it out of the back. So here's kind of the text. Here's what Donald thinks is happening. So he's having this very sweet moment, very happy expression on the pigeon and Donald. This guy's doing okay too. Then we have these guys pilfering out of his hand and the reacting of the other pigeon to this. And then this negative space separates the two gags. And I love that detail of the toes poking through. Really solid perspective on this bench. Observing all the thickness on the edges. That black shadow also sets a nice ground plane. And you notice a lot of these covers have just a blank, or a flood color on it. Illustration, as I stress, has a purpose. And the purpose of this comic cover is to sell in this rack. This is a typical rack in the 50s. And prior to television, and this was the early days of television, the mid-50s, print media was mass media. Newspapers, magazines, and so newsstands were sort of the conduit. And so think of this newsstand as the homepage on your streaming service. You know, which of these are you going to click on? So the purpose of the cover is to stand out on this and draw somebody in to pull that one comic off and start flipping through it and maybe part with some of your cash. I don't know if this is politically incorrect or not, but you can tell the popularity of the characters by how many times he doesn't even show their faces. But really simple gag, and you know, the 6 feet, one hat, and the stretch to kind of frame that gag, to isolate it a little bit. Butts are always good. Nice triangle composition, that pretty straight line of action, a little bit of a swag there, but boom, boom, boom. That's just all contained. Here's an interesting historical footnote. You'll see here, Dell's pledge to parents. And here's on the inside front cover, just telling you how, good, clean, fun, all this stuff. This is a reaction to a book that came out in 1954 by Frederick Wortham called Seduction of the Innocent. And if you're familiar with the Comics Code seal of approval on the top right-hand corner of many comic books of this era, it was a result of this book. Wortham, so it was, one of many moral panics we've had in the U.S., but Wortham blamed juvenile delinquency in the post-World War II period on the influence of comic books, which are, about horror and all kinds of nonsense. So that's Dell saying, hey, we're not the problem. We do wholesome duck comics. Okay, very complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters in one image. And I've always said, if an animator had written the tale of Snow White, there would only be 3 or 4 dwarves. So he uses a dark foreground element to pull these guys, the smallest characters, by the way, to the front to give them equal weight with the larger characters. Then we have the midground, the second berm, Scrooge in front of it, Donald behind it. But also look how he's, let me change colors for a moment. He's preserving, there's a little bit of an overlap there to sell the distance, but he's preserving the negative space to give every character a silhouette read so we can see what's happening. If I filled these characters in black, you would still, their actions would be obvious. Also, subtly different expressions on the 3 boys. He hasn't seen it yet. He's just seeing it. He's seen it and he's scared. Very good acting, and all using just those slippery ovals on top of each other. And then these two are kind of in the middle of the action, and then those 2 characters popped up nicely on the crest of the hill to give them, because they're now the smallest in the frame, to give them a nice silhouette so we can see what's happening. Over on the right here, much simpler cover, but really fun acting. And Scrooge's face, he's maybe looking up at God, wondering if this is A-okay. Seems to be almost showing off in how much detail he's putting in these bricks, but really nice ellipses. Take a drink. So his perspective's pretty solid. So we have this top ellipse is, if we imagine it inside a square plane, would be like that. And then the bottom ellipse is bigger, this dimension. So it's on a bigger thing. So those frames, and if we, built the well up, it would keep going and then go over our head. So you see how just the shape of those bricks on the ellipse show his knowledge of the perspective. Very funny. Again, 4, 5, 6 characters in frame, and it's airy still with that many characters. The boys are pretty much in agreement. This is the most boring day of their lives, but Scrooge is kind of loving it. I guess because he's the competitor. Back in the days when you could make fun of gunplay, but he cheats it a little bit. That gun handle seems to go away, but think how hard this is. And where would you, for this gag, okay, the gag is Donald's going to shoot a bee on his own nose. And so the joke is 1 second from now, Donald's going to be screaming and in pain. And the bee's probably flying away. So he doesn't do it this way. That might appear a little more aggressive. So he's doing this long hook around to get this beautiful little moment. And this is an example of an illustration principle that's pretty useful, is the 20-80 rule. Look how much detail is within this circle. The eyes, the eye-to-eye confrontation, even the fur on that bee, all that detail with all these expanses with very little detail. So where the detail is used is directing you. It's helping tell the story. Now, notice he has overlapped each of these here to keep this kind of foreground piece together to isolate those guys down there, send them way in the back. This one is just wonderful. His ass is in that crocodile's mouth. And look at how, this is the crocodile. We can't see his front legs, and he's completely twisted. You get kind of a good twist on that neck, but it's I don't know. It's an amazing accomplishment to get to sell that gag. Again, another use of perspective to get the characters equally weighted. Getting just enough detail to tell you everything you need to know, and negative space. The water flows all around that character. This is, think about this gag. Try to put yourself in the position. Try to think up these gags. A gag with no words, just told through acting and staging. So this one, he's breaking the fourth wall, staring at us, and is kind of, can you believe this? But the fishing pole, the boots, so we are set up that this is should be fish in there. There's a cat in there, and then this frying pan on the fire. So it tells the whole story. The cat licking his chops. I mean, there's so much known in this. Really beautiful storytelling. Fun Easter gag. Also in these, look how he's kind of setting a ground plane without any ground plane. You can kind of feel that because of how that's laying there, the shape of the ellipse on that can. You see what I mean? Those subtle things are telling your brain where that floor plane is. Here again, the ellipse there. That's a round chair. So you see how you can, it's in there really nice. Also pretty fun faces on the boys. This might be the most valuable one I have, this one on the left, if it's worth anything. But it is my absolute favorite cover of Carl Barks. There are 5 characters. There are 3 different stories. All 5 characters are having a completely different reaction to what's going on with them, and there were 3 different things going on with them. So let's get in closer. This to me, so look how small this is. The boys are fishing with coin purses in Scrooge's Money Lake. So to me, that's funny enough. You could have Scrooge, an angry Scrooge here. What are you guys doing? You know, that would be enough. But no, that's just a throwaway gag in the background of the image. Now we get to the boat. Scrooge's story. So he's, of course, bullying his nephew into the thankless task of rowing through these coins. So he's on his adding machine, but he's not like happy I got this much money or something. He's like, do I have every cent? So here's that triangle. Look at this. The 3 things tell that story. And he is focused. Nothing else is going on except the calculation of this money. And then long-suffering Donald. So look at, first off, showing Donald under the chin, upwards 3/4 view. Not an easy feat, but I'm sure Carl knows these characters pretty well by now. But look at the line of action. And there isn't a lot. You don't see everything, but what you do see sells it. That leg is straight. These arms. That neck. So he is, let me switch again. He is all force. Look at those oars bend with the force. And so that's Donald's story. He isn't paying attention to any of these guys. He's just trying to get this stupid boat to move. So beautiful, beautiful cover. Here's another one. Lots of characters and a lot of darker ink. He's really selling the kind of danger and adventure in this one. But and they have their own treasure chest, not gold like mine. But so here's a little triangular story. They've hit the jackpot. They've found their thing, but then, oops. And he's selling us that. There's almost like a triangle in a triangle. Really beautiful cover and nice framing of the title too. That sword going around it, this hat. Just look how well engineered that blank space in the illustration was for that type. And then some interior pages. Just look how beautiful and clean they are. And he sort of, if you know what you're doing, you can violate the rules. Normally, you would not mirror the actions of the characters, having them all running on the same foot. But the joke is they all talk in unison. They are unified. And so he's sort of breaking that rule for a joke. Use of a silhouette and nice negative space around that car. I'll talk more about it in a second, but his animation of cars is wonderful. Okay, so this page is a beautiful example of his using eye direction. So Donald comes in like this, directing you there. Then he's turned to direct you there. Now he's looking down, across. You see, he's moving your eye through that page. At this point, he probably was so good at it, I don't know if he's even aware he's doing it. This is something I got to credit cartoonist kayfabe. I did not notice this myself, but as a animator, he's using the footsteps: left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. He's stepping sequentially to move you through the page. And lastly, I'm going to discuss these pages from Vacation Time. It's hard to find a bad story, but this is considered one of his better ones. I love this splash. One of the things Barks was really good at, aside from the sort of 2D cartoony animation, he's pretty good at this realistic stuff. And so it gave the characters a real sense of adventure and peril. So the joke is Donald can't see any of the dangers. He wants to leave the city to go out here where it's safer, and only the boys can see the peril that's happening. But look at first off, look at the structure on this vehicle. So the vehicle is turning in space. Everything's balloony. These tires are just, overinflated, and this one's twisting backwards. So if you put the axles in, the car is actually bending that way. But it's still staying in a pretty, a somewhat realistic perspective. Look at the volume on this cylinder and all those lines selling the shape and volume of it. Then, of course, this negative space. That car's up in the air to imply both speed and kind of instability. Then I love this, talk about line of action. Guy's coming right at you, and so is the shadow. And look at the silhouette of the mouth on that panther. So lots of things going on there. He's really having fun. Here's some of the more fun frame design he had, where they're showing what Scrooge's money fell down a sinkhole, so they're showing the graph. All right, well, that is it for my origin story of my collection of Carl Barks covers. I hope to see you again in 2 weeks. If you want to support my channel, the best way is to buy my books. Larry Gets Lost children's books. Larry's probably been lost in your town. You can buy them wherever books are sold or directly from my publisher, Sasquatch Books. And my Canadian books are available through my Canadian publisher, birdhousekids.com.